Welcome back to After 40. I'm so excited to have a really amazing guest here today. Today, I have Kiki L'Italien, who is the EVP of Marketing and Community Engagement of Big Red M, where she focuses on branding, messaging, and community building. She is also the founder of Association Chat, where she continues to serve as CEO and editor in chief with over 20 years of experience helping associations and nonprofits build stronger connections with their communities. Kiki believes that trust is the foundation of all effective communication. Welcome, Kiki.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you here. And listen, you've done a lot. Can you give me a little taste of this journey of yours and how you got here?
Well, I got to tell you, I didn't expect to get here the way that I did. I don't think any of us really do expect to kind of have things play out the way that they do. But I started out thinking that I was going to be a journalist, and I went to school for that. And I was going into print journalism, and I had a really lovely professor who thought that I was extremely talented at business writing and told me about a job opportunity that was available in marketing. And this was this sort of draw into this marketing world that I didn't think that that was what I was going to go into. But I took that jump and then took another jump, ending up in DC. I'm originally from Missouri. And when I ended up in DC, it was an association that needed some marketing help. And that got me into the association world, built myself up in the association world. And I think that the ongoing connection to all of that was this desire, no matter what I was doing or where I was, to just connect with people and talk about what's going on and really focus on, what's the real story. And that ultimately always gets us back to trust. So
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, and you really had to trust your connections all the way through as well. So making all of those leaps that you've had and trust yourself. So you're right, trust is at the core of everything, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I think, it's been kind of fascinating as things have developed over time because one of the things in the very beginning, playing with technology and exploring new ways to connect when it was social media and bringing people together in communities there. And then, which is what I did with some of the associations that I worked with. And then exploring live streaming and figuring out how to bring people together around community and connecting and communicating about some of these different ideas. That helped to spawn Association Chat, which is this media platform that I sold last year. And it's just continued to, sort of grow and develop, but it's something that I think that ultimately I'm just curious about what's going to happen next. And it's brought me a lot of happiness and a lot of maybe confusion over the years, but it's something that I think now that I am where I am, I feel more comfortable with understanding its role in my life.
So you've seen a lot over the past 20 years. How has the marketing landscape changed in recent years? And do you see any trends emerging?
I mean, I'll tell you, one of the biggest trends that I see is this idea that we can't trust anything that we see. Right?
Mm.
We've got deep fakes. We've got, and it's so wild because I remember back when I was reading about deep fakes and thinking about the future, I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a real problem. Like, how can we solve for this? But we're here. Like, this isn't like a futuristic problem. It is here and now. And that's the thing, is that everyone's talking about a recession. Trust is in a recession. And what we have now is people not really knowing what to believe. A lot of people of all ages believe more of what they're seeing on TikTok than they do from their own news that they see on TV. And the disturbing thing is probably the reason that they are trusting that is that it seems real. It seems like it's taken from real life. for some reason that has more legitimacy than what's right in front of them. So I was just pulling together some information about like print. Obviously, like, maybe not for your listeners, but for like in my life, magazine is one thing that I produce with Association Chat. And there was a very definitive reason that we wanted to have a print magazine along with the digital, even though everything has been pushing more for the digital for the past like 10 plus years. And the reason why is because, it's tangible. It's something you can hold. It's something you can touch. And people trust what they read in a magazine that they can hold. And they also retain it, by the way, better, but they trust it more than what they see on a screen. And I just find that really fascinating.
That is fascinating. So where do you think it's going to go in the future? Do you think that we're going to be introducing more print, more things to build trust? Where do you think trust will go in the future?
Well, I mean, I hope that we get to a place where we are able to trust things more. Hang on a second. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm so busy. I hope we're going to be able to get to a point where we can trust things more, where we're able to trust each other better. But right now, it's hard to say. I mean, if I look at a crystal ball and I say, what does the future hold, is cloudy at best. What I know for sure is that we're going to be looking around and trying to figure out what it is that makes the most sense, that we feel safest to trust. And that's why I think that becoming better educated about trust signals and trust cues, how can we really believe in the exchanges that we're having with other people? How can we believe in the communication that we're receiving from organizations? And this is really important stuff, because no matter whether you have a nonprofit, you're working with, a corporate organization that is trying to communicate to just anyone, what are you doing with my data? Do I feel safe when I visit your website? Do I feel safe when I'm receiving your messaging? Do I think that you have positive intention in your engagement with me? These are the types of things that I'm going to be looking at. And I think all of us are, as we try to figure out, are we interacting and engaging with another entity that we can have faith in what they're saying to us?
I'm so glad you're talking about this because there hasn't been anyone else I've been hearing talk about trust and how that looks for the future. So this is really refreshing to hear that you're thinking about it, that you're looking at ways that we can take a look at trust for how we interact and how we build trust for the future, because that's really important. So tell me, does storytelling have any role in this? And how does it play any kind of an effect with marketing and especially with nonprofits?
Oh my gosh, it has so much to do with this. Well, so if we think about it, I mean, the way that we engage with other people, there are some things that have remained the same throughout time. And one is that we are just engineered and geared as human beings to be able to respond to story. It's how we learn, it's how we remember things. It's like the early days of storytelling. This was how information was passed along. But honestly, this is the way that we remember things now. And I'm much more likely to remember, information and details and things like that if it's told to me in the framing of a story. And so I think it's very important, the way that we think about how we're communicating and how we're engaging with others to cultivate trust, to think about the ways that we tell our stories, and to think about, how do we want others to interpret these? So learning how to tell stories better is really important, but also being very highly conscious and highly aware of the stories that we're already telling, and maybe even telling ourselves, that can change things dramatically. So let me talk about a little bit about an example
Yeah.
of some storytelling that I think makes a difference, especially when we're talking about how we're engaging with others to cultivate trust. So, I have not been the best at telling stories my whole life, but my grandfather was, and he was somebody who sometimes would drone on for a little bit too long, but like really loving guy. Everybody loved to actually sit with him, even if he would tell us some of the same stories over and over again. But the thing is that everybody trusted him so much. They trusted him because he was sharing not just the positive stuff, not he told these stories that were rich, that maybe illuminated a little bit of the piece where he struggled, and then talked about the way that he came out of it. He essentially took people on a journey when he was sharing a story where it would explain and provide that context so that they would understand in a story, short or long. As he got older, they got longer, but like he would be able to convey a whole lot about himself, his character, his competence, all of these different things that explained even more than just the details or the facts. It would actually demonstrate to others through his storytelling that I can trust the way he makes decisions. I can trust in the character of this person I'm listening to. I can trust in his competence because he seems to be laying things out in a meaningful and a structured, logical fashion. And he was the perfect example to me as somebody who had this really great reputation for a number of reasons, but a lot of it had to do with the way he told stories. And I think that it would help all of us to probably get better at looking at that and examining how we can incorporate that into our lives.
That makes sense to me because when a person is given facts, we don't always trust where we're getting them from. Where did they get those facts from that they're
Mhm.
giving me? In a story, you get to determine where the source is that it's coming from. The person is either saying where it came from or it's from themselves. So that makes a lot of sense to me psychologically why that would be the case. So thank you for talking about that because I wouldn't have put that together. So that's insightful.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk about my grandfather. That was nice too.
So now you've navigated your career into midlife. So what
Mhm.
advice would you give to others about embracing change?
I gotta tell you, I think I struggled for a long time with accepting the weirder aspects of myself, the pieces that didn't fit into a neat box that I thought was the way for many years was the way to success. I actually until I sold my company, I was kind of had this sort of, oh gosh, it's a little bit out there. It's a little bit different. It's not what everybody else has done. These feelings around it. And I got to tell you that the older that I've gotten, the more that I have come into really owning and appreciating some of those things that are a little bit different about who I am. I see them more as strengths, and I see them as, oh wow, this is the differentiator, right? This is the thing that is actually something that's special. I don't know how you give that to people earlier. I do think that it's this sort of evolution as you get older, and maybe that's part of the gifts that we get as we age. But like embracing these changes in my own life as I've gotten older, I'm actually looking forward, even to the gray hair. Like I'm actually looking forward to more to come because I've been able to observe in my own life that things do keep getting better and better. It's like I there's this knowledge and appreciation that, yeah, life's not always going to go the way that you think it will, but I've managed to make it through to this point. And I do see where yeah, pretty smart, like I can figure this stuff out. And that makes me feel really good, and it actually makes me feel positive even today, when there's a lot of uncertainty around this. It does make me feel hopeful for what's to come.
Yeah, that's so well said because midlife is a time of a lot of change, but it's change that we get to usually make about ourselves.
Yeah.
It's the first time that we have the bandwidth to say, "Hey, I'm gonna focus on me now," whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And we have to trust ourselves at that point to be able to say, "You know what? I've got this." And sometimes when we reflect, that's what we can do. We can say, "I'm going to give it my all and trust that I have the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the weirdness to make it all
Yeah.
happen."
Yes, it's so good that you say that, because actually that's another thing about trust is like, the self-trust actually has to come first. And a lot of people who struggle with, people not always feeling like they don't come across as trustworthy, many times when you dig at it, it turns out that there's a little bit of this lack of self trust.
Yeah.
And when they work on that, and there are ways to do it, but when they work on the self trust part, it actually improves their relationships with everyone else around them because they trust themselves more. And isn't that great? Because like most of us as we get older, we begin to understand that we can. We've made it through some scrapes and we're still here and fighting. And so I think, that is one of those gifts that comes to maybe not all, but to many of us.
I think it does come to us, but we don't always acknowledge it.
Hmm.
Until you talked about trust in the way that you did, I don't know that people necessarily put trust with storytelling, trust in marketing, and in ways that, are tangible for us. But I do know that developmentally, trust in ourselves is something that does come to us in midlife because like you said, we've gone through the scrapes. We know what we're all about. We kind of know who we are, and
Yeah.
we know who our people are, and we're comfortable with that. And that's part of trust, that whole component of it.
Yeah.
So midlife is filled with riches like that, but we don't get to experience it unless we know what we're dealing with. And if we can put a name to it, say, yes, I trust myself, I trust my circumstances, I know what to look for, that helps to validate that feeling, which is wonderful that you're talking about trust now so that everyone can see it in all the areas of their lives.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that everyone needs to learn some of these like foundational rules of trust. It's like what builds trust? How do people So if you understand and appreciate why we want it, why we want others to trust us, then the next natural question is like, well, how can I demonstrate that? How can I make what are those elements that I can work on? And that's something where it's really interesting because I've gotten pushback about what I'm about to say. You can fast track trust, right? And people say, no, you really can't. It takes time. It takes a long time to develop trust. But then I'm like, well, look at con artists. Look at,
Yes, you're
like
right. That's so true.
somehow we're making trust decisions all the time. And sometimes they're not the best ones. And yet, listen, these con artists, they understand what some of these trust principles are and they use them. And what do? We think about it. They use visual cues. So, a great story. I mean, this is kind of taking us down a dark path, but if we want to look at an example, serial killer Ted Bundy what would he do? He would act like he was hurt and he would wear a sling on his arm, or he would put on like a doctor's jacket, or he would do something visually that would represent, oh, this person is, not dangerous. This is
Right.
somebody I can trust. This is somebody,
Vulnerable.
and this is for nefarious purposes. But if we took that and we flipped it and we thought about, well, how can I convey, something that will make somebody else feel more comfortable so that they feel like they can trust us? Well, the honest way to do this, the real way to approach it is, look, I am somebody who, I'm a little bit artsy, or I'm a little bit like, I want to convey, I want what I'm saying out of my mouth and telling you about myself, what I'm writing in my display. I need you to see and interpret that visually so that it makes sense. Is that congruent with what you understand? If I tell you that I'm a detail oriented person, but in the back, you see that I've got like laundry overflowing on the, and things thrown, falling off of my bookshelves, that is, even if there's an excuse for it, even if I just had people going through my house, that's going to tell you there's incongruency there, and it's going to create this barrier to trust.
Yeah.
So the rule to this isn't that, you have to like put on a costume to match what your LinkedIn profile says. Really, it's just to say, be aware of anything that's going to create barriers and try to eliminate them if you can, because if you're able to do that, then it's going to help people to believe in what you're saying more, believe in your communication, and trust you better. And that's just one example, but there's so many. I mean, I
And
think
that's
about, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this just came to me. You can't be congruent if you don't trust yourself,
Right.
really.
Yes.
And so that bit of
Yes.
trust that you're talking, like I'm learning from you right now. It's pretty awesome. So, you're talking about having everything be the same and not posing
Right.
in a different way. That's going to make a person not trust you if you're doing that. And that makes sense. And
Mhm.
we can always pick out the person who's got one image in one place and another image in another place. And when they don't match, you say, who is that? Well, that
Right.
person probably doesn't know who they are either. There's a
Right.
lot of that that's happening. So, wow, this is so deep. I love that you're looking at trust. I love that you're talking about it in a new way, because a lot of people are so afraid of it with AI coming around, like you said, deep fakes. But there are ways that, we can look at the people around us and assess them.
Yeah,
And
and lucky us, for humans, we have flaws. We have unique little things about us that make us a little bit different. And in the age of AI, it's kind of nice to see an occasional typo, because you begin to believe that might have actually been written by somebody actively engaging with content in real time, you know, versus somebody who may have put something through AI and like put it up. I want to say I am definitely I use AI every day. I use generative AI specifically, and I love ChatGPT and Claude for all of the things that they can do. But this idea of, can I trust that somebody really sent me that in-depth, meaningful, note, and it was from the heart, and it wasn't generated by AI, can I trust that? I mean, if it says we're going to dive deep, and then it's going to say these other things, these cues that
yes,
it's somehow AI generated, that's a cue to me that like maybe they didn't write it. But if it has little details interspersed about meaningful interaction, I will trust it more. In the association world, or basically in any kind of marketing, if it's something that is for that audience's jargon and understanding, something that they know internally, they recognize as, this is part of us, this writing is speaking to me, and I can tell it reads as true. Even if you are using that to help you craft what you're posting or sharing, it at least shows that the person behind it that's working with AI understands who they're
yeah,
writing for, right? And so, and that's what we're really looking for. Can I trust this? Does this person really understand who I am? Who created this?
right,
Does this
right.
company, does this organization really understand? Is anyone there behind the curtain?
Yes, yeah, you're right. The Oz effect. Um, so, what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by women in leadership roles
Mhm.
today?
I think that, well, I mean, one is that I think that a lot of women are kind of looking around. I'll speak for myself, but you're kind of looking around and saying, gee, there's a lot that's shifting in our society right now. I'm not sure exactly how things are going to fall out. There's this whole trad wife movement, and, which is, I don't
Define
know.
that, because I just had that defined for me. I did not know what
Yes.
that was.
So trad wife movement, this is a whole look, aesthetic idea of it being popular. And you can see this in Instagram and TikTok. But trad wife is all about being the traditional wife. And, it's a lot of younger women who are wearing more conservative clothing that's very feminine, and they're choosing to stay home, and they're choosing to have more traditional roles. And, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with taking more traditional roles, but this idea is it's sort of glorifying and making that, making it so that that is the preferred way to be, right? Like we should go back to a more traditional roles, like they were in maybe the 1950s, right? And, that's kind of strange for somebody who grew up on Sesame Street. And, it's like, we can do anything and we can go
Yeah.
out there. And so, on the one hand, I really like the ability for women to be able to embrace, if they want to take that role and they want a more traditional lifestyle, more power to them. Um, but I do worry because I feel like, there is this push in society that we're feeling right now, where it's sort of this pendulum swing that's swinging really hard in this other direction. And if you're in the working world and you're a woman who's used to a lot of autonomy and independence, it's a little bit concerning, I think, to look around and say, I wonder how this is going to shake out. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And, I'm saying this to you, and it's this, I'm post 40. I'm definitely in the midlife zone. And but I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I'm watching her engage with the world around her. And I'm like, I don't know. She's going to be going into the working world soon. And what's that going to look like? Like if more and more of this generation embraces trad wife and that kind of thing, like when we start pushing as women in the workforce against ageism and things like that, like how's that going to play out? I don't know.
Yeah, I always say that it shortchanges men too. I have two teen boys, or one 20 and 19. And, when we have strict roles, it makes it difficult for everybody. There's a lot of pressure then on the man.
I feel like that too.
You
Yeah.
it doesn't give anybody a winning position. Uh,
No,
I don't.
no. It's like, I mean, I don't feel like you're failing as a man if you like aren't out there working on cars every weekend. And I don't think you're failing as a woman if you don't know how to like bake your own bread, right? And but now I have to say, I don't think you're failing as a woman if you're choosing to go get your doctorate and like,
Right.
pursue other things either. And I just, I feel like at this point, it's, I don't know. I'll tell you, it's interesting for me because I'm surrounded by really amazing women who have done incredible things. And I feel like the society around us is offering us all of this other, just sort of like, I don't know, distracting kind of, like how are things going to shape out with the sexes and how gender roles in the United States, at least. And yeah, I can't even tell you how many incredible women I know that are around me that have all accomplished so much. And I'm in awe. One of my best friends is 84 years old. She had her own design business. She's my neighbor. She's like, and she's still teaching. She still like will go to civic organizations, and whatever the latest thing that she's been studying, she will end up giving presentations about it. And I think, God, I really want to be like Elaine. I really want to be like her. She's so cool. And I love that we have all of these examples, like that
Yeah.
there's not just one Elaine. There is just one Elaine, but there are a lot of examples similar to Elaine that are out there where they're just incredible women doing incredible things. And I hope that we can continue to go in that direction, right?
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of feelings of weight on the shoulders of women in leadership roles because many times people feel like there's carrying the next generation. Like, how am I
Yeah.
going to lift up the next generation? How am I going to make sure that I can get both genders in a great place? There's just a
Yeah.
different mindset for women in leadership roles now that's trickier than it was in the past.
It is trickier. And I think that because people are living longer and everything, this whole sandwich generation situation is very real. You just went through dealing with, and I'm still kind of going through it right now. But, my sister and we moved our mother out from a different state, went through all of this stuff working with her, and she passed at the end of last year. But it was like, how can we, for a while, she was living with us, and it's like, how can I do this, run my business, have
Mhm.
a 17-year-old that I'm like, like, how can I do all of these things? And I'm a mom, but I'm a daughter, but I'm a caregiver, but I'm this. And there are just so many of us that are out there that are doing that. And, and I think with things like, the economy and stuff, it's just not everybody can put their parents into an independent living situation or a place for advanced memory care or things like that. And so households are really being stretched. And I think that women, especially who are trying to play all of these different roles, find themselves in a place that's really difficult because while I'm lucky, I think that my relationship with my husband is pretty, we have our different areas. We've worked out a pretty good, I'd say it's equitable. It's not equal, but we've worked out our own sort of balance. But even so, I think that a lot of the caregiving type stuff naturally would end up falling, over on my plate.
Mhm.
And I, at least I know emotionally, I felt like I carried a lot of that burden too. And so I don't think I'm alone. I think that there are a lot
Yeah.
of women that are out there like that. And that's definitely an issue that I don't know where that's going. I don't see it going away though.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about it because there's so many people in midlife who don't know that other people are going through the same thing. The
Mhm.
sandwich generation with all of the care that is giving to parents and children, and the whole family lifestyle. So, we often leave that out and just focus on a person's career.
Mhm.
But I wanna shift it back now to trust again, and I wanna, finish up our conversation with trust because that is something new and refreshing, and I think that I love that you're looking at trust in a way that is different than the distrust that we've all been sort of afraid of,
Right.
and mistrust. So, can you tell us a little bit about where we might be able to look forward to thinking about trust in our lives in terms of where we're going to go with marketing in our life, in any other way that you see that we can insert trust?
Well, I think this, like anything, once you become more aware and you start paying more attention to it, it becomes easier to identify ways that you can use what you understand about trust. Once you've decided that's a value that you care about, then you begin to identify, oh, well, here's where I may not be demonstrating the kind of behavior that would make it easier for somebody to believe in me. Or here is a way that, I think that if they shifted that, maybe in my management style, if I have more clear communication with somebody that I'm working with and I explain, when you do this, it makes it hard for me to understand if something's getting done. A huge issue. This comes up with like remote work and stuff like that. A lot of people have people that are spread out, and working in different areas. And I think more honest, straightforward trust conversations would help. I think this is why I don't need to see everything that you're doing, and I don't need you to account for every single minute of the day. But if we use these Monday boards, or if we use this, I will understand that progress is being made. This is what this tells me. And when there's an explanation of why certain things are in place the way that they are, it allows people to understand the thought process behind it, and it allows for better trust to be generated. I'm actually encouraged. I think that the more we talk about trust, the more we explore it, the more we think about it, the better and better we get at being able to use that and incorporate those different principles into our communication, into our marketing, into our interpersonal relationships that are so important. And hopefully that ends up allowing us to become better at it at a grander scale, right?
I love it. This is so refreshing, and I'm so glad you brought this element of trust into the conversation today. It's really quite delightful to be able to think positively about trust in our future in all aspects of our lives.
Well,
So,
I love it. Yeah, thank you for letting me to talk about it. I think that that's great.
so tell me, where can people find you, and where can people reach out to you should they want to get in touch with you?
All right. So people can find me at my name's a little complicated, KikiL'Italien.com. They can always find my writing at associationchat.com. And another good place for people to check out, and that is something that I'm really starting to write a whole lot more about, this trust topic, and to develop that, is the Trust Project. And so if people go to thetrustproject.com, then you can sign up and follow me for more.
I can't wait to have you back on to talk more about the Trust Project in about a month or two,
All right.
because this is fabulous. So thank you, Kiki, for coming on. And everyone, everything that we talked about will be in the show notes. So do not worry about spelling Kiki's name. It'll be in the show notes. Thanks, thanks again.
Thank you.